On today's episode, find out who cracks the top 10 in my midseason prospect rankings.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, just a quick reminder to please go jump in the comment section down below, as today's episode is Mailbag Monday. Of course, I won't be able to answer those questions on today's episode, but I'll make sure to bookmark them and answer them on the show this time next week. Hit that like button for me as well. And oh yeah, go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. Super close to reaching my goal of 2,000 subscribers. I've finally hit the 1.95K plateau, so we're getting really close. And a reminder, subscribing to the channel won't cost you anything. It's 100% free and really does help me out tremendously. Last but certainly not least, got to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. Be sure to go check out FanDuel.com if you're not already a member to win $300 worth of bonus bets if your first bet wins with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, happy Monday, everyone. Thank you all again for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And we got a rare victory Monday to kick things off here this week, as the Blackhawks, despite being in the midst of a 4-game losing streak in their lone contest over the weekend, found a way to take down the Vegas Golden Knights with a big-time 5-3 win. Despite it looking like the Blackhawks, in classic Blackhawks fashion, were on their way to handing this one over to Vegas, as after jumping ahead 3-1 with a really strong performance to close out the opening 20 minutes, Vegas came with their charge. They tied the game up 3-3, and they actually outshot the Blackhawks 17-3 in that middle frame, but some really good resiliency from this group, which had to make the win feel even better considering the lack of resiliency we've seen from this team over the last month or so. Really good fight in the final 20-21 minutes. Blackhawks get a crucial goal in the final minute of the second period and then wind up scoring the only goal in the third. They hang on to defeat Vegas 5-3, as I said, snapping their 4-game losing skid. And how about this, Blackhawks fans? Listen to 6 of the past 10 wins for the Chicago Blackhawks team. Now, obviously, you got to go all the way back to, I believe, late November to count those 10 victories. But among the Blackhawks' last 10 wins, they've beaten the Vegas Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche, the Washington Capitals, the Minnesota Wild, the Dallas Stars, and the Florida Panthers. They're capable of time to time beating these type of opponents. It's just the consistency and everything in between has really been an issue, as I'm sure my audience is well aware of, something that I've been griping about throughout the season and throughout the last couple of seasons, sadly, here on Locked On Blackhawks. But the real turning point of this game and the real crucial moment for the Blackhawks that went on to spring them to this victory, I thought, was Seth Jones having his bounce back game, getting a much needed performance following a big-time struggle out of number 4 since returning from that right foot injury. He obviously had the catastrophic performance, what I thought was probably his worst performance as a Blackhawk last Monday against the Calgary Flames. There were some folks, voicing their opinion that Seth Jones should be next in line to be scratched, considering we've seen a handful of veterans be healthy scratched previously on in the season due to lack of meeting up to the standards that have been set. Seth didn't wind up getting scratched, but very nice to see him have this type of showing. And it has to feel good considering, what he's been going through. Not only just the struggles on the ice, but finally he talked to the media, which is something he probably should be doing a little bit more regularly as someone who wears an A for this team and is a crucial leader of the rebuild, right? Whether that's what he signed on for when he came here to Chicago or not, he's still expected to act and perform as a leader. So not only was he kind of underwhelming on the ice, I thought it was disappointing that he didn't talk after the Winter Classic, after another lopsided Blackhawks loss. And again, you're at the helm of the team. You're the one who kind of the media and everyone is going to for answers. To not be available for those type of situations, I think is kind of unacceptable for Seth Jones. But regardless of that, this 3-point performance out of Jones, including what I said was the crucial moment of the game, getting that tally for the Blackhawks late in the second period. Connor Bedard feeds Jones, who I thought recognized the play beautifully to kind of cheat his way up to the right circle and then beat the Golden Knights goaltender with a blast of a wrist shot. That wound up being the game-winning goal for the Blackhawks. Jones adds 2 more assists, 3-point game, his first multi-point performance since way back on October 12th against the Edmonton Oilers. So hopefully that kind of gets Seth Jones playing some more inspired hockey than what we've seen from him as of late, because again, what he was showing from us prior to this game simply wasn't good enough, especially for a guy who a lot of these young players and everyone really in the locker room looks up to. And again, I know there are a lot of Seth Jones haters out there, but this type of showing that he had, we need it more consistently, yes, but that goes to show the type of impact that Seth Jones can make for this Blackhawks offense. Because like I've said, and actually when I broke down his and gave him his midseason grade and talked about him on Deep Dive 4.0 recently here on the show, I still said, despite all these struggles, there's no denying that Seth Jones has the best skill set on the back end for the Blackhawks and can really help out this offense in a huge way when he does get going. Those type of performances are exactly why. Love that type of impact out of Seth Jones. And when he plays like that, again, it gives this Blackhawks offense another gear. Need him to keep playing like that to help out the struggling Blackhawks team. Also, definitely got to give a shout out to the Blackhawks top line of Tyler Bertuzzi, Connor Bedard, and Frank Nazar, who are skating together for the second consecutive game, continuing to cook. We got 2 more goals out of Tyler Bertuzzi in this one, now giving him a team-high 16 on the year, both coming right in his office. Nice redirect on a shot from the point from Seth Jones. Those are the types of plays we need to see. Being aggressive on the man advantage, using his wheels and his vision and his shot to get pucks on net. Good things always happen when you get pucks on cage, said Eddie Olczyk. But man, Tyler Bertuzzi has really found his groove here with the Blackhawks and with Connor Bedard. Now has, like I said, 16 goals on the season, and out of his 26 points on the year, 16 have come in the last 19 games since December 9th. 8 goals and 8 assists during that stretch, right after, probably not coincidentally, that's when Luke Richardson got fired, giving Tyler Bertuzzi more of an offensive role, actually allowing him to play with Connor Bedard. Not surprised to see those two have success with one another. Tyler Bertuzzi, when he's playing like this, man, he is a special power forward type of player, and that's precisely what the Blackhawks have missed for a long time and what I think they need along with Connor Bedard. Just the 1 assist for number 98 in this game, but that does now give him 15 points over his past 13 games and 10 goals and 16 assists in 25 games since he snapped that real long goal drought in late November. He's been a much more consistent and impactful player for this Blackhawks offense. Obviously, I love him with Tyler Bertuzzi. They just make sense with one another, and I think Frank Nazar makes a lot of sense with them as well. Somehow Nazar didn't have a point in that shootout loss for the Blackhawks last week against the Nashville Predators, but nice to see him follow that up with another good showing and picking up a secondary assist on Seth Jones' game-winning goal. Love him on the top line. Anders Sorensen, keep your fingers off. Let those guys cook. Hopefully they keep that going tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. Last thing I got to talk about from this Blackhawks win on Saturday, love to see Lukas Reichel score a beautiful goal, and the way that he did it was perfect, displaying the speed and the skill combination. And I know getting that finished product and seeing it together, it's been few and far between, but those are the moments that are exactly why Lukas Reichel needs to get larger opportunities, because that's what he's capable of. And I hope that was kind of a aha moment to this coaching staff and to the front office, because, you know, Lukas Reichel just has traits that no one else really on this Blackhawks team does, and he can help out in so many more ways, I think, if you just give him the opportunity. Yeah, he's going to have nights there where he struggles, but you just need to allow him to battle through those. And, you know, I like him a lot better on that third line with Colton Dach and Nick Foligno than I did with Maroon and Smith. I do think that line worked well, but they were just so capped offensive upside-wise in terms of getting the finished product. None of those other two players are really known for their offense in their latter stages of their career. So I like getting Lukas Reichel a little bit more juvenated offensively line mates. And hopefully, yeah, that gets him going. He now has 4 points over his last 9 games. And even we heard Connor Bedard talk to the media today, pumping up Lukas Reichel's tires, talking about how he absolutely flies out there. And he even mentioned the skill and speed combination. It's like Connor Bedard even recognizes that Lukas Reichel can help out this Blackhawks team. And I don't think there's any reason this front office or this coaching staff should be quitting on him. And listen, maybe this time down in the bottom six, being a more hard-nosed player and kind of gaining a little bit more of an edge. Again, I don't ever think that's the type of play that Lukas Reichel is going to be known for, but maybe adding just a little bit more of that, maybe that does wind up helping him long term. That's to be seen, obviously. It's just not necessarily the way I would have handled it, but it seems like there is some progress being made with like Reichel's production. The eye test has been real good as of late, and again, he's moving up in the lineup a little bit. That's something that I like to see. Blackhawks have really struggled against the Carolina Hurricanes these last handful of years, so it's hard to have high expectations for them to keep this momentum going on home ice tonight against a really good Canes bunch, a team that I didn't think would be able to kind of keep up that standard after the offseason they have. The offseason they had, they've been able to do that. So another big test against a tough team for the Blackhawks here tonight on home ice. But there is everything I have from a nice 5-3 win over the Vegas Golden Knights on Saturday. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into part 2 of my Blackhawks midseason prospect rankings. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting because right now, new customers can start the postseason strong with $300 worth of bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And FanDuel now has so many ways for you to pick up a W. And the FanDuel app is easy for you to navigate. And like I said, they have a variety of bets that helps keep the game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid out instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. So whether you're betting on your favorite team like the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs, ooh, baby, that is going to be a big-time matchup in the AFC Conference Championship, or you're just looking to add extra excitement to the playoffs after your team's already been eliminated. Either way, go and visit FanDuel.com in order to join today. And again, if you're not already a member, you'll have the chance to win $300 worth of bonus bets if your first bet wins. So go and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Segment 2, it's time to get into part 2 of my Chicago Blackhawks 2024-2025 midseason prospect rankings. And again, quick heads up, go and check out part 1 of my midseason prospect rankings if you haven't done so already to check out who came in at numbers 20 through 11. It honestly only makes sense to go about these things in order. Plus, I also give a little bit of a refresher in part 1 of my prospect rankings the last time I went through things at the end of the 2023-2024 campaign. Plus, I give some honorable mentions in part 1 as well. So again, go and check that episode out if you haven't done so already. Came out on Saturday. And another reminder, let me know your thoughts about part 2 in the comment section down below on today's episode, whether you think I'm too high on someone, too low on someone, if I'm just on. Give me your full reaction to part 2 down below in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. Coming in at number 10, kicking off the top 10 on my Chicago Blackhawks midseason prospect rankings is none other than Ethan Del Mastro, 2021 4th-round pick, 105th overall selection in that year's draft. He's a 6'4", 210-pound left-handed defenseman who actually just turned 22 years old a few days ago, back on January 15th. So a happy belated 22nd birthday to Ethan Del Mastro, who I am a little bit biased towards Blackhawks fans. I want to be honest with you out there. I do think Ethan Del Mastro was a really special player, and his development over the last few years has been incredible, particularly on the offensive side of things. He was actually the first, not only Blackhawks prospect that I ever talked to, but like the first ever real hockey player prospect that I really got to talk to when I burst into this media scene. So I was always grateful for Ethan Del Mastro and at the time the Mississauga Steelheads, the team that he was playing for in the Ontario Hockey League, for giving me that opportunity. But even then, I never really, for being the 105th overall selection in the 4th round, I never really saw what has transpired for Ethan Del Mastro these last few years playing out when I was talking to this kid, because he was going into a year being the captain of the Mississauga Steelheads, didn't really have a ton of offensive upside wound up being a late add to Canada's World Junior roster, wins a gold medal there. So there was not really a whole lot known about Ethan Del Mastro, but it's been fun following along with him over these last couple of seasons. He currently has 8 points, all assists in 37 games with the Rockford Ice Hogs, his second year at the professional scene. And listen, Blackhawks fans, it is disappointing that Ethan Del Mastro hasn't kept down the offensive pace that we saw from him during his rookie AHL season, where he tallied 7 goals and 30 assists in 69 games at the AHL level, was named an AHL All-Star, I think was the youngest Ice Hog to do that in like a decade or maybe even ever. I forget exactly what the statistic was, but he had a mammoth first year on the pro scene with the Ice Hogs. And yeah, the production hasn't been there this year, and there has been some lack of consistency on both ends of the ice for Ethan Del Mastro. I certainly recognize that, and that's why I have him down at number 10. If you watch part 1, then you know at the end of the 2023-24 season, I was even higher on Ethan Del Mastro than I am right here, right now. So I have bumped him down a little bit, but I do think we need to keep in mind everything that goes on in Rockford and has been going on really since Luke Richardson got fired. We got to take all of that with a grain of salt a little bit here, because while the Ice Hogs have kind of figured things out a little bit, they don't have the head coach that has really run that program, if you will, successfully the last handful of years. The Rockford Ice Hogs have been in the Calder Cup playoffs the last few years because Anders Sorensen was promoted to the big leagues once Luke Richardson got fired. And the Blackhawks, I know they're really high as an organization on Mark Eaton from a front office perspective, but I talked on the show about how putting Mark Eaton as the Rockford Ice Hogs head coach, as I mentioned, I know they're high on him and his brain, but as a guy with no coaching experience, like, that was a little bit of a bold move, and it's going to be tough for that group to kind of handle adversity or have solutions to problems when the guy who's been solving them and doing it really well the last few seasons and familiar with all of these prospects know how they work, know how they operate. They got kind of a new guy in there to be their leader, right? You can understand why things haven't gone so smoothly for the Rockford Ice Hogs. And then there's been a lot of players called up, right? We've seen Louis Crevier up and down, Isaac Phillips before he got traded, Kevin Korchinski, Frank Nazar, Colton Dock. The list goes on. Drew Comesso's had to be up, Arvid Soderblom, right? Like, it's kind of a mess with the Rockford Ice Hogs this year. So I think we got to, again, take everything going on down there with a grain of salt. And I do cut Ethan Del Mastro a little bit of a slack, right or wrong, I don't know, but that's just the way I'm going about things personally. And again, he had such a strong first pro season. I don't think you should ignore that for kind of a shoddy front half of an AHL campaign. Again, when this kid's just turned 22 years old a few days ago. And as far as his strengths, I really do think he shapes up to be a quality defensive defenseman at the NHL level. He's got good size, as I referenced, 6'4", 210 pounds. He's not an elite skater on the back end, but he is a capable skater back there too. I've referenced the developing offensive traits, like even the last couple of years in the OHL, his numbers were really starting to blossom as a, one of the best shutdown defensemen in the entire league. Also a 2-time gold medalist for Team Canada and played a shutdown role there. A lot of experience with Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski at those levels as well. And then I mentioned the shot last year, 7 goals in 69 AHL games, definitely an uptick and just more offensive upside in general for Ethan Del Mastro than I think anyone anticipated when the Blackhawks first drafted him. Now, in terms of weaknesses and downside, yeah, he doesn't possess, elite offensive instincts. He's not a great transition player, but he has blossoming offensive skills. And one thing that always really stood out to me about Ethan Del Mastro was the poise, man. When he played preseason games, even when he was still in the O, before he had even made his AHL debut, I was really impressed with how he didn't panic under, duress when he has forecheckers on him. And he is a capable enough skater to kind of elude out of harm's way. And he made a lot of the right decisions. So I still believe in a lot of the traits that Ethan Del Mastro possesses, even though his sophomore campaign hasn't gone as swimmingly as a lot of us would have liked. But I still project him as a strong middle pairing defensive defenseman who can play on the penalty kill, play in those tough situations. I do think he is a puzzle piece here for the Blackhawks. That's why I have him at number 10, but it is much lower than I had him at the end of last year. Coming in at number 9, next we have Marek Vanacker, 27th overall selection in the 2024 NHL draft. Blackhawks traded back into the first round to select him. He's a 6'1", 180-pound winger who's still only 18 years old, will be turning 19 later this year in April. Still lots of runway for him because he's so young. Was among the younger players in the 2024 NHL draft. Unfortunately, he missed most of the early part of this season as he was rehabbing from offseason shoulder surgery. As some Blackhawks fans put it, there were some frustrations that the Blackhawks traded back into the first round for a guy who needed to have offseason shoulder surgery. And yeah, there are some concerns there. Vanacker also only has 15 points, 7 goals, and 8 assists in his first 20 games this year, not even close to the 82-point pace that he put up last year, 36 goals and 46 assists in 68 games. That really got him onto the radar and got his stock all the way up into the first round. He is starting to get going, and again, he didn't have an offseason, didn't really have a training camp whatsoever to kind of gear up. So he's getting up to speed at this point in time, and I think a more fair assessment of Merrick Vanacker's game will be at the end of this season. But like I mentioned, he's starting to get going, putting up some decent points, and we really saw what he was capable of when he led the Brantford Bulldogs in scoring last year when Nick Lardis, current teammate and fellow Blackhawks prospect, was out of the lineup a lot of the time. As far as the strengths for Merrick Vanacker, speed, absolute blitzing speed, pretty decent playmaking as well, has some decent size in terms of being 6'1" for a winger. You would obviously like to see him add some more weight, has had a developing shot these last couple of years as well. A pretty good dynamic offensive ability considering the playmaking, a growing shot, and the speed is always going to give him good upside. I think there's also the potential for him to play multiple roles should he kind of go along that path these next few years at the NHL level. As far as weaknesses, like I mentioned, he definitely needs to add weight. He's not a center iceman, so it's, will he be a play driver as a wing? Doesn't possess elite hands. Could he be a 20-goal scorer at the next level? That's still to be determined. But again, there's a lot of upside and a lot of runway because he's still only 18 years old and possesses that speed. He's going to be going back to the Brantford Bulldogs as well next year because it's either OHL or NHL for him. And hopefully he'll have the kind of year that we're seeing out of Nick Lardis right here, right now. So still too early to kind of be worried, I think, whatsoever about Merrick Vanacker only having 15 points in 20 games, considering, the injury and everything as well. And he's got another year of development in the Ontario Hockey League. As far as what I project him to be, I think he has the abilities to be a very speedy middle six type of winger with good offensive play. We'll see if he kind of diversifies himself these next couple of years, but again, a lot of runway there, and that's the reason why I have Vanacker coming in at number 9 over an established guy at the pro level like Ethan Del Mastro, because there's still some unknowns about Merrick Vanacker, but he has a lot of upside higher than Ethan Del Mastro. Next up at number 8, we got Nick Lardis, 2023 third-round pick, 67th overall selection in that year's draft. 5'11", now listed at 185 pounds, so done a good job at adding some weight here as of late. We'll never really know how accurate that number is or if it was the number that Lardis just kind of gave to everyone, but still a young man himself. Doesn't turn 20 years old actually until July, so he and Merrick Vanacker will be the same age technically for a couple of months there. But what a year Nick Lardis has had in the OHL for the Brantford Bulldogs. We saw him last year have 50 points, 29 goals, and 21 assists in 37 games. As I talked about when going through with Vanacker, Lardis unfortunately missed most of last year. But man, he has been a monster for Brantford so far this season. A league-high 37 goals, has chipped in for 29 assists as well, giving him 66 points now in 41 games, top 5 in the league in scoring. A really dominant year, exactly what we wanted to see out of Nick Lardis in his final year in that league. Strengths for him, goal scoring, elite shot, knows how to score on the power play. I think he's got some pretty good vision and play recognition as well, as he knows how to find little soft spots and zones, and he sneakily goes to the net and finishes off a lot of plays despite not having the best size. And that's really the weakness for Nick Lardis, is the lack of size, and there's that debate is whether he's going to be able to have this type of success against grown men. There's also the concern about his play away from the puck, whether he'll get bullied along the boards, if he can make an impact in other areas when he doesn't possess the biscuit. And that's kind of the gamble on Nick Lardis. But I definitely think it was a worthwhile selection for the Blackhawks with the 67th overall pick. As far as what Nick Lardis projects at, it's kind of either a special top 6 player, particularly in the goal scoring abilities, who can be a really good power play impact player, or he'll probably be one of those, tweeners, fringe guys who's always kind of on that cusp of being there, but is never really there. And again, it's just hard to tell at this point in time. But you can't really knock Nick Lardis for doing everything and then some you'd like to see from him at the OHL level. It's just, again, we kind of got to see it against some more quality competition and more specifically against grown men. But there's no denying that Nick Lardis has special upside with that goal scoring ability and some pretty good speed and vision along with it. So I think Nick Lardis, like I said, he can project as a top 6 winger with a really good 30-plus goal scoring upside if all goes well. There's just a little bit of a debate if that is going to happen. I certainly hope it does, but we're just going to need to see more out of Nick Lardis. I certainly have him higher than I did at the end of the year, but I still do feel kind of the same way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Nick Lardis be a special player at the NHL level. I also wouldn't be surprised for it to not go as swimmingly. We'll see. The upside is certainly high, though, and that's why I have Nick Lardis at number 8 ahead of Marek Vanacker and Ethan Del Mastro. Next up, at number 7, is Drew Commesso, 2020 second-round pick for the Blackhawks, 46th overall selection that year, 6'2", 185-pound netminder who is going to turn 23 years old in July, so getting to the latter stages of that prospect level, but as a goaltender, as I've mentioned on the show time and time again, they're all a little bit different. Commesso is currently 8-9-1 with a 2.81 goals against average and .902 save percentage, along with 2 shutouts and 18 appearances for Rockford. As I talked about earlier with Ethan Del Mastro, I think you gotta kind of take the lack of consistency from Drew Commesso with a grain of salt, and also consider that's exactly what happened to Arvid Soderblom last year when he was kind of in the same role as Commesso, never in one place consistently, having to go up and down and make spot starts at the NHL level because of injury. So I don't think it's a surprise that Commesso hasn't posted the, 2.65 goals against average or the .908 save percentage we saw out of him last year in his first year at the pro level. But I, again, don't really have that many concerns. I still do think he's capable of being the goaltender of the future for the Blackhawks. I thought he had a pretty good first NHL start, all things considered, against the New Jersey Devils on the road. Things were going good for him until they didn't in the third period. Really tough spot to put him in, but I hope he keeps a strong head on his shoulders. He's still only 22 years old and has so much good experience. I mean, World Championships, Olympics, playing for BU for 3 years, playing for the United States National Development Program growing up. Like, Drew Commesso has been primed to get to this level, and I really hope kind of everything going down in Rockford this year doesn't hinder his development. I still have strong hopes for Drew Commesso, considering what's gone down at the AHL level this year. That's why I have him at number 7 ahead of Nick Lardis and Marek Vanacker. Maybe that's crazy. That's just my 2 cents. Again, let me know down below in the comment section. Rounding things out on today's show, coming in at number 6 is none other than Oliver Moore, 19th overall pick in the 2023 NHL Draft, a 5'10", 195-pound center who actually turns 20 years old on Wednesday. So we had a happy belated birthday to Ethan Del Mastro, and we got another Blackhawks prospect birthday coming up here in a couple of days. Moore is currently a sophomore with Minnesota, the Golden Gophers, 19 points, 5 goals, and 14 assists through 24 games so far this year. Did have 33 points in 39 games as a freshman, tallying 9 goals and 24 assists, and really picked up his production in the latter half of that season. And quite honestly, that's kind of been the same. We're not fully in the second half of the season yet in college hockey, but Oliver Moore has definitely picked it up compared to the start of the year. He might just be a little bit of a slow starter, but he's got a lot of good experiences as well with the development program. Now a 2-time gold medalist like Ethan Del Mastro for the United States at the World Juniors. He had 5 points, 1 goal, and 4 assists in 7 tournament games this year while centering the third line, playing wing on the second line, and kind of the medal games. As far as the strengths for Oliver Moore, it's speed, more so than any Blackhawks prospect. I've categorized speed as a strength for. Oliver Moore can absolutely fly, man. That top-level speed is unlike anything you've ever seen, and he pairs that along with that, a really good motor, really good tenacity. He cares about two-way play. He makes an effort in the dirty areas, along the boards, in front of the net. He plays like an absolute dog out there, and he's got some pretty good playmaking as well. As far as the weaknesses, the goal scoring, that really hasn't translated, and only having 5 goals through 24 games this year is definitely disappointing as a sophomore. The hands haven't really been able to match up to the feet consistently. I thought that's what happened at the end of last year, but he's kind of reverted back to his old self a bit this year. Doesn't have the best hockey IQ out there either, or truly elite offensive upside. But if he does ever have his hands catch up to his feet, there is so much runway for Oliver Moore because he's one of the best skating prospects, maybe the best skating prospect some of these scouting websites has ever seen. So because of that, I think he projects as the either second or third line center of the future for the Blackhawks. I really like that he plays a hard-nosed two-way game for a guy who's only 5'10", and that lack of size, he's 200 pounds. He's probably going to need to continue to add weight to be really strong on his stick and hold down in those dirty areas. But I think Oliver Moore has the tenacity and the work ethic to kind of be that guy in the future for the Blackhawks. The offensive upside is a little bit of an issue, and that's what's going to determine ultimately whether I think he's a second-line center or a third-line center for the Blackhawks. But regardless, I think Oliver Moore is going to be playing a massive impact in all areas for the Blackhawks. Second power play, he's going to be a penalty kill type of guy. He's going to be good on the defensive side of the game. I think Oliver Moore is really going to be one of those players that us Blackhawks fans come to love here in Chicago. That's going to wrap up part 2 of my Chicago Blackhawks midseason prospect rankings. Be on the lookout for part 3 coming later this week, and also a special episode dropping with WGN's Charlie Roumeliotis on Wednesday. Good stuff coming up here on Locked On Blackhawks. Another reason you should hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. I know we're running a little late, but in just a moment, I still got to get to our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. But first, I got to talk to you all about Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. And the same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. And Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy because as one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. And what sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fit-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. So to go and get the right life insurance for you for less right now, be sure to go and check out selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Again, that's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL in all caps to go and find your personalized life insurance for you. Select Quote. They shop, you save. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you all for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen. Here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast so that you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. And you can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Hockey right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, before I close out today's show, as I mentioned before the break, still got to get into my weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. And again, a quick reminder, jump in the comment section down below if you're watching this right now on YouTube and thinking to yourself, hey, I got a Blackhawks question that I want to ask Jack. Or even if you're tuning into this right now through an audio platform, can easily drop your question in the review box, preferably with a 5-star rating. Those are always great and put a big smile on my face, but please make sure to reach out with your Blackhawks related question. I'll bookmark them and make sure to answer on the episode this time next week. First question that I got today comes from Jim Kielma, who asked, do you think Sorensen will at some point put Reichel, Nazar, and Mikheyev together? I think that line would cause some havoc with their speed. Plus, both Nazar and Mikheyev are extremely sound defensively. Yeah, I don't hate the sounds of that line whatsoever, and I really do think Ilya Mikheyev, as I talked about in Blackhawks Deep Dive 2.0, has maybe been, outside of Ryan Donato, the most underappreciated member of the Blackhawks this year. Defensively, he's been really sound. He plays on the penalty kill, which is, of course, one of the few strengths that the Chicago Blackhawks have. And quite honestly, when he has gone up to the top line with Connor Bedard from time to time, yeah, he hasn't lit it up offensively, but that's not what Ilya Mikheyev is. His speed has honestly been a nice weapon up there along with Connor Bedard, so I would not hate to see this line put together whatsoever. All three of those guys could absolutely fly out there. Probably the 3 best skating forwards for the Blackhawks, unless I'm forgetting someone right here, right now. But I do not hate the sound of that. And like you mentioned, Jim, Mikheyev and Nazar, both known for their defensive side of things. Lucas Reichel wouldn't be forced upon the defensive role. Maybe you could even put Frank Nazar at the center ice position and see how Lucas Reichel fares at the wing. Just an idea for the Blackhawks, because it seems like they forget Lucas Reichel has looked better on the wing in his time at the NHL level. I actually really do like that idea, Jim. Next question comes from Brendan Rafferty 5677 on YouTube, who asked, when would you expect the Hawks to start fishing for top free agents / biggest trades? Additionally, what names would be / are on your radar? Well, we'll see what winds up happening, obviously, with Mikko Rantanen, and we know, obviously, Leon Draisaitl isn't going to be hitting the free agent market any longer, but Mitch Marner and Mikko Rantanen are really the 2 big name in terms of free agents potentially set to hit the market this summer. If I were the Blackhawks, I mean, you're desperate for a forward star. You got to be all in on those type of guys. The 2 things are, it's going to cost, and you might even have to overpay, because the Blackhawks are, they got an intriguing prospect pool. They have Bedard. It's a big city, original 6, but it's been a nightmare here these last few years, man. And there's no guarantee like this thing is about to get turned around right here, right now, even if these guys were to join on. So, it's hard to say, it's hard to expect those guys also to willingly sign on with the Blackhawks in favor of another team who's ready to win right here, right now. But those are the type of the players the Blackhawks got to be in the mix for. And the summer of 2025 was always really the first summer that I had circled, because this felt like the first time where the Blackhawks actually could spend some of that money that they've had freed up on their books these last handful of years. We'll see if that's the case, but man, it's getting to that time where we're pushing fans' patience in terms of frustration with this rebuild, and we got to start winning more games right here, right now. So that starts with Kyle Davidson in the front office. He's got to make something happen this offseason, bigger than what's gone down the last few years. Next question comes from PHHDVM on YouTube, who asked, hypothetical, if Bedard decides he doesn't want to play in Chicago, how long does the team have control over his contract? Well, technically, he could part ways with the Blackhawks at the end of next year, should it go that way. But even if Bedard has been outspoken about his frustrations and the losing going on here in Chicago, he's kind of the last one who should really be upset about it. He's only been here for a year and a half. There have been guys who have been here a lot longer going through this losing stuff. And did Connor Bedard expect it to change immediately overnight? Now, don't get me wrong. They're doing more losing than I'm sure, anyone anticipated under Bedard, particularly this season. But I still don't think it's pushing him to the point of oh my God, I don't want to be here with this organization anymore. But again, it is getting to the point for multiple different reasons where Kyle Davidson, this front office, they got to change the tides in the direction of this organization and steer it in the proper direction. This next head coaching hire, this next free agent class, this next offseason is very, very crucial for the Chicago Blackhawks. But as far as Connor Bedard leaving, I'm still not worried at this point in time. But at the end of 2026, if you technically want to know, that's when it could be. Next question comes from, last question actually on today's show, comes from Isaac Guerrero 8873. Isaac, always appreciate you tuning into the show and reaching out with your questions. Question for Mailbag. Experts have power forward type Porter Martone as a top 5 prospect drafted by Hawks based on need. What is your evaluation of his play at the World Juniors? Well, didn't have the biggest role at the World Juniors, and also Canada didn't even make it to the medal stages, and that's the true competition you kind of would have liked to see him get some more reps against. We know Porter Martone is going to be in the top 4 of the 2025 NHL draft, right? That top 4 is pretty much set in stone at this point in time, and that's the type of player the Blackhawks have really, really been missing. Someone with size and skill to go and play in that top 6. Porter Martone is undoubtedly going to be intriguing, regardless of what I really think about his performance at the World Juniors. It was just kind of meh, but you got to consider how young the kid is as well, and the rest of the talent that Canada had on that roster, right? He was never going to get the lion's share of the opportunity. So his performance at the World Juniors really doesn't impact my evaluation on him and whether the Blackhawks should look in his direction or not. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what pick the Blackhawks have if they do wind up inside that top 4 and who's already off the board. But Porter Martone and his skill set and his player type certainly should be intriguing for the Chicago Blackhawks. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. Again, thank you all for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. Help me reach my goal of 2,000 subscribers, and also that way you won't miss out on any of the latest episodes dropped on YouTube. Until next episode, Blackhawks fans, enjoy the rest of your Mondays. I know it's frigid temps here in the Chicagoland area, so hopefully everyone bundles up and stays warm. We'll see if the Blackhawks can keep it up tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. Hard to keep my expectations high, but I'll be sure to talk about the game and more on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.